Hello, this is Jim Schaffer from the Start Haus Ski Shop, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to soften up a pair of high-performance ski boots to get them to be just the right flex for you. All performance boots have some kind of pinning rivet in the rear spine. The pinning of the cuff to the spine is important for both controlling flex moving forward as well as rebound coming out of the turn. If these rivets are gone and the boot is only connected by the two side rivets, the cuff can then actually move freely, and yes, it will flex more softly forward, but you will lose power coming in the back. The key thing to an overlap shell is the connection between the strong spine of the lower and the strong spine of the upper that gives you the control and the power laterally and fore and aft. So we don't want to change this connection. So the method in which we go about softening the shell is to actually lower the V-cut, which allows the boot to move forward more easily and still has the strength of the spine in the back to support rearward movement. So the way we go about doing that is measuring out. It'll look something like this. I take the center of the cut because I want the boot to flex in the same manner, and I match the center of that V-cut by just drawing myself a target line. The target line is now 90 degrees to the floor, and then I'll come in and measure out the distance that I want to lower my cut. In this particular boot, I'm going to start at 20 millimeters. That's kind of an average amount for this particular boot. It should probably lower this boot somewhere about 10% of its flex. So I mark my mark across, and then I'm just going to come in and draw out my matching line so that my 90-degree line off the floor goes through the center. I'm going to drill a starter hole to prevent the shell from cracking. So I drill a starter hole that goes right down to my mark. Take a tin snips, cut into the hole, but don't cut past it, or else you run the risk of the shell cracking. Okay, and now I'll just trim this up and clean it up with a little grind with my Fordham flex shaft grinder. So I clean up into my mark. And I would then repeat this process on the opposite side so that the boot still flexes evenly. So there's my inside mark. I've already drawn out my outside mark. I'd go through the same process, but that's essentially the easiest way, and this still would remain with the cuff attached to allow the boot to flex more easily forward to make this a softer boot. So that's one method for softening. There's other issues that prevent a boot from flexing as well as it can as well. When the cuff sits on the lower, many times the bottom end of the cuff will flex forward but then be trapped by the top of the shell. So this part of the cuff will bottom out on this part of the lower, and sometimes on smaller boots it'll bottom out on the buckle. And so in this particular case, what we'll do is we'll center up our mark on the shin and then plan on drawing both on the cuff strap and the cuff base an improved shape, if you will, that can then be ground once again with your flex shaft grinder into the cuff. I'm going to turn away from you here. So these are two very quick and easy steps to alter the way that the cuff runs down on top of the lower by one, pulling the cuff strap up, and the first step generally is by lowering the V-cut. The V-cut can go as low as possible to the point where, you know, it still gives room for the cuff to come through. So those are really the two main things. And then the last thing I want to talk about are other alterations you can make to the shell of the boot that can improve performance. So for example, on my boots I've got fairly short legs and a fairly big calf, and my calf muscle tends to have a lot of pressure up against the shell, and so what I've done is I've gone in and I've removed that material. That move would look something like this. On the outside of the cuff, if you just came in and followed the spoiler line, drew straight across and followed the cuffs line out, you could easily come in here and once again with your flex shaft grinder lower the position that the cuff is having and affecting on the lower leg. So this can be done really anywhere on the cuff. Outside, inside, the spoiler height can be adjusted or accommodated, or even the amount of leverage you have on the front can be lowered or raised by adding material. So those are three key shell adjustments that you can make to a high-performance ski boot that will allow it to perform exactly to your style, your strength, and your weight. So lowering the V-cuts to allow for more easily forward flex, raising the curve of the cuff as it hits the lower, and adapting the top of the cuff by lowering or raising the height of the cuff to match perfectly with the skier that you're putting on the boot. So those are three great adjustments you can make to modern ski boots, modern performance ski boots, to help you ski a little bit better. Thanks, Jim Schaffner from the Haus, Truckee, California.